Earlier, we're now going to get down to the implementation section of this project, where we're going to build a machine learning model to successfully classify melanoma from skin images using PyTorch. Okay, so here I have all the code in a Kaggle environment, which we're going to run, and I'm going to explain as I run the code. So for this particular project, we're going to be using PyTorch XLA, which is basically PyTorch, but it's made to run on TPUs or tensor processing units. TPUs are specialized hardware which is built for deep learning in particular, and it can be orders of magnitude faster than both GPUs and CPUs at machine learning. And since Kaggle has recently made TPUs available on Kaggle kernels, we're going to be using these amazing pieces of hardware to train our models as fast as possible. So, okay, cool. Looks like the code has loaded up. As you can see here, the first step in our process is to set up PyTorch XLA, which will help us run all our PyTorch models on TPU instead of GPU or CPU. So this line of code which I just ran here, it says curl. Basically all it does is it retrieves the Python setup code which you need to run to set up PyTorch XLA. So it ran successfully. That means we have the .py file which has all the PyTorch XLA setup code. Now we say python pytorch xla env setup.py. This basically runs the setup code and installs PyTorch XLA on the Kaggle kernel environment. So once this is finished running, we should have Torch XLA up and running and ready to train our models on TPU. As you see, it can take around 2 to 3 minutes. As it's mentioned here, this may take around 2 minutes. Looks like it's running fine so far. Says installing collected packages. Maybe that's a sign that it's working. Successfully installed Torch 1.6.0. Installing collected packages Torch XLA, that's nice. Bunch of pip warnings, which I'm just going to ignore. Okay, cool. Looks like the setup code is done running. Now we should have PyTorch XLA up and running on our Kaggle kernel, which is awesome. So now the next step is to export XLA use bf16. So what this does is it enables PyTorch to use the bfloat16 data type while training models. So when Google came up with the TPU, one of the key innovations was the bfloat16 data type for machine learning models, because when you have a data type that's as intense as float32, right, it has a lot of representational capacity, but it has a lot of overhead in terms of computation. So Google came up with this new thing called bfloat16, which offers the capacity of float32, but it has much lower computational overhead, and that makes training models much faster on TPUs than GPUs. This is one of the main innovations that came with the TPUs. So when we say export XLA use bf16 equals 1, we are explicitly specifying that we want to use a bfloat16 while training our model on TPU. And then we install these two libraries which we need. Colored is basically this very nice little library that lets you color text that you print in Python, and it makes training logs look really nice and readable. And then you have EfficientNet PyTorch, which will help us load all the which will help us load the EfficientNet architecture and weights which we need to classify melanoma from skin images. So just run this code. So it should take few seconds because it's installing two libraries. More pip warnings. Okay, looks like it ran successfully. We've exported bfloat16 equals 1 and we've installed the two packages that we need. Cool, so now all we need to do is import all the libraries that we need. As you can see, the first few libraries are the bare essentials for dealing with data. You have OS, GC, CV2 for loading images, time for keeping track of our training, NumPy and Pandas obviously, and as you can see towards the end we have all the necessary PyTorch imports for data sampling, training and optimization, and then the Torch XLA imports for creating models on XLA, parallel loading, etc. And these two packages are arguably the most important packages out of all of these in terms of boosting performance, because from EfficientNet, PyTorch import EfficientNet, this lets us get access to the EfficientNet architecture and weights, which will help us create our melanoma classification pipeline. And then we have albumentations, which helps us create data augmentations while training, like flipping, rotation, random cropping, etc. So we just run the installation. Okay, cool. So looks like it's done importing all the necessary libraries that we need. Now we need to unzip these zip files because these zip files have all the images that we need for our training. So you can directly get the images from the competition dataset, which is melanoma classification right here. But I created this kernel here, which says resized. It basically contains resized 512 by 512 images. And the reason I did this is because input output with this competition dataset is pretty bad, because the images are of a very high resolution. Most images are greater than 1000 by 1000. And that's why I thought I'll just sort of do all the resizing and pre-processing in a separate kernel and then load them into the new kernel, because this will speed up training by more than 2 times. Just resizing in a separate kernel and training in a different kernel will give us a big speed boost. So let's just inflate these zip files and get all the images. Okay, cool. Looks like it's working. Okay, cool. Looks like it's still getting all the images inflated. Okay, looks like it's done running. So it's done inflating all the images. Now the next step is to define all the necessary hyperparameters and paths that we need to run our machine learning pipeline, and this includes all the important configurable parameters. So W and H are the image height and width, which will be passing into the EfficientNet model to extract features. So 512 by 512 is a pretty high resolution, but it's not so high that it slows down our training too much. So 512 by 512. And B equals 0.5. B is a very important parameter because it specifies the proportion of positive samples that are sampled in each batch. So if we specify B equals 0.7, it will sample 70% positive samples and 30% negative samples in each batch. So when we say 0.5, that means we want equal sampling of each class. Okay, then we have split. Split basically gives the proportion of basically gives us the proportion of the data which we want to use for training. So split equals 0.8 means we want to use 80% of the data for training and 20% of the data for validation. Sample, this is basically a simple flag which enables or disables weighted sampling. Sample equals true enables weighted sampling. Sample equals false enables the default random sampler, which does not use weighted sampling. In our case, we want to use weighted sampling because we have a very imbalanced data set, like I mentioned in the previous section. And then mu and sigma, these are the mean and standard deviation values of the color channels in our images. And we need these values to normalize our images before passing them into EfficientNet. Because a lot of these pre-trained models expect normalized images instead of the general 0 to 256 RGB format. So once we load the images, we need to normalize it using mu and sigma. As usual, the normalized form of an image is image pixels minus mu divided by sigma. That's how you normalize an image. And now we have a couple of hyperparameters which are specific to training of the model. Epochs 2, learning rate 0.001, and then batch size of 32. Batch size of 32 seemed to be pretty stable for me while training on TPUs, so I stuck with it. 64 results in some sort of out of memory errors with the TPU. So I stuck with 32 because this is the maximum batch size that I could get to work. And then the path from which we load the EfficientNet model and the image paths from which we are able to extract all the images we need for training and testing. Okay, so let's just run this, define all the hyperparameters. Now this is an image path dictionary. So what that means is this for loop, it generates a dictionary which maps all the image IDs, right? Like every image has an ID. It maps it to the folder. So when you get when the data loader, when the PyTorch data loader, PyTorch data set gets an image ID, it's able to automatically figure out which folder to look into to get that image. So this is a very simple utility which makes the dataset code look much cleaner. Okay. Now we set the random seeds for PyTorch and NumPy. This will help us keep our code deterministic, because without setting random seeds, our code will generate different results every time, and that will make our results unreproducible. I'm not sure what the opposite of reproducible is, but to make sure our code is reproducible and others can reproduce your results, you need to set random seeds. Because when you create a neural network, a lot of things are done randomly. The data is sampled randomly, the weights are initialized randomly. So if you set the random seed, you'll make sure you can replicate your experiments again and again. So now we need to load the training and testing metadata. Okay, so these are our training and testing data frames. This here is our testing data frame, and down here this is our training data frame. You can see the testing data frame obviously doesn't have the target column. The training data frame has the target column. So the target is either 0 or 1, like I mentioned before, right? It's a binary target. And as you can see, there's a lot of extra patient level information in these data frames, like which part of the body the image was taken from. Was it taken from the head or neck? Was it taken from the torso, etc.? This is all patient metadata. In this particular tutorial, we'll only be using the image features, but you can also integrate these tabular features into your neural network pipeline to boost the accuracy. But here our focus is only to build a model that takes an image and outputs 0 or 1. So we're kind of going to be ignoring these metadata features. All we care about in these data frames are the target, which is the last column here, and the image name. Image name is basically a unique ID assigned to each image, and we'll be using these image IDs to load the images from the files. And that's why we needed this path dict over here. Path dict takes the image name as input and it outputs the correct folder to look into the correct folder to read the image from. So now little bit of EDA to understand the data better. So This is some simple printing to check the different values for each categorical column. The target's either 0 or 1. As you can see, sex is either undefined, male or female. And here are our metadata features, right? Anatome site general challenge, benign malignant. So anatome site general challenge basically tells us which part of the body this skin image comes from. Can be torso, head, neck, oral, genital, from any of these places. So as I said, for this particular pipeline, we're not going to be using this particular feature, but you can integrate it to improve accuracy. Okay, and now we see the relationship between the target and gender. So just waiting for the graph to load up. Okay, cool, loaded up. So as you can see, I have a lot of plotly code here to generate this nice little plot. Basically gives us the proportion of males and females, proportion of male and female for each class. So as you can see under melanoma, okay, the graph doesn't seem to have loaded completely here, but anyway, under melanoma you can see that the proportion of males is very high compared to females, and under healthy you can see that the proportion is very even, right? So if someone is healthy, then it's equally likely that the person will be either male or female. But if someone has melanoma, then it's more likely for that person to be a male. So as you can clearly see here in this particular data set, we have a greater proportion of males having melanoma than females. Not sure if that's something that translates to the population, but in this particular data set you can see that the sex has some sort of correlation with the target. And as I said, we won't be using this in our image classification pipeline. And this is the target versus benign malignant. Benign malignant is the other feature that I was talking about before. So as you can see, this bar is completely pink and this bar is completely green, which makes sense because healthy and benign are synonyms, and melanoma and malignant are kind of synonyms in this sense. So it makes sense. All healthy images are benign, all melanoma images are malignant. This feature isn't particularly useful. Okay. Target versus proportion. Okay, so this is about the part of the body from which the image comes. Okay, so as you can see, under melanoma images, the orange bar is very short compared to the healthy bar, and that's the first thing that strikes your eye when you see this stacked bar chart. So the orange color actually corresponds to the torso. So that means that a large proportion of healthy images are from the torso. So if you get an image from the torso, it's actually not very likely that it's of a person with melanoma compared to healthy. Maybe melanoma on the torso isn't that common compared to not having melanoma. But in general, it looks like torso is a very common area for these images. Okay, so and the other thing that we can see here is the purple bar is much bigger for the healthy images, which means that lower extremity. So you can see some sort of pattern here, right? So okay, sorry, I think I removed the purple bar by mistake. Okay, it came back. So as you can see here, the lower extremity and torso seem to be very common under the healthy category, and the upper extremity and head and neck seems to be common in melanoma. So we can see a sort of pattern here where the head and neck and the upper extremity region seems to be more likely to have melanoma compared to the torso or the lower extremity region. So there seems to be some sort of pattern in this plot, but These are all just metadata features, nothing to do with images. And then finally, we need to look at age versus target. Okay, so this is a nice little distribution plot. As you can see, the 0 represents not having melanoma and the 1 represents having melanoma. So the blue curve is the age distribution for malignant patients, and 0 is, the orange is the distribution of age for healthy patients. As you can see, healthy patients on average have a higher age on average. I'm not sure if this is a statistically significant fact, but it seems clear that the non-malignant patients or the healthy patients seem to have a higher age on average according to this distribution plot. Okay, cool. So we got some idea of what the metadata looks like. Now let's look at some of the sample images in our data set before going on to the modeling part. So we're just loading up a couple of images of these skin lesions and just plotting them. Okay, cool. So these are some images of skin with melanoma, right? So as you can see, a lot of them have these sort of brownish, reddish patches, right? So a lot of them are asymmetrical, and these ones are usually the ones with melanoma. The ones with brown asymmetrical patches, that's usually one of the signs of melanoma. One way of finding if a patch is melanoma or just a normal patch, like this one for example.